order the special closed session for the City Council and Mesa. It is 6:33. The City Attorney will report out.
Thank you, Mayor. The Emeryville City Council and the Mesa Board met in closed session on the items listed on the closed session agenda. Regarding item 5.1.1, an update was provided and direction was given. Regarding item 5.2.1, an update was provided and direction was given.
Great. And with that, we are adjourned from the special closed session. And Sherry, when you tell me we're okay, I'll open up the study session.
All right, go ahead, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, I'd like to call to order at 6:34 this special study session for the Emeryville City Council. Do we need to do a roll call vote?
Yes, please.
Go ahead.
Councilmember Bouders? Oh, you're muted. There you go. Councilmember Bouders.
I am freezing every 10 seconds, and I have not heard anything that's been said so far since we came out of closed session, just so everyone knows. Oh, I'm here. If you've called me, I'm here.
Okay.
I don't see Councilmember Donahue yet. Councilmember Medina?
Here.
Vice Mayor Martinez?
I'm here, and I'm wondering, I think there might be a phone number that you can dial in just the way Chad dialed into closed session. John, if that helps.
He's calling me right now, so I'll see if I can help him. But before I do that, Mayor Pats.
I am here. Okay. I'm going to pause for a moment while you let Scott in, Member Donahue in. And I'm going to go ahead and read the mayor's script just so we have done it again. So I'd like to state for the record that this meeting is being conducted via teleconference pursuant to the Brown Act waivers under the governor's executive order in response to COVID-19. During the public health emergency, City Hall is closed. The agenda states that the public may view the meeting that is being live streamed online at ETV Channel 27 and provide comment by submitting an online comment form, which will then be read into the record by staff. The comment form can be accessed by going to our main City of Emeryville website at www.emeryville.org and by clicking on this council agendas and videos. Once there, you'll see a link entitled Submit an Online Speaker Card. The public also has the option of participating in tonight's meeting via Zoom and may provide public comment during the meeting using the Raise Your Hand feature visible on your screen. Or if you call in, you can press *9. The Zoom call information was provided on the posted agenda as well as via e-notification and on social media. That is all I have to stall with, and so I'll go around and say, do we have any ex parte communications on this issue? Seeing none. Now is the time for the public to comment, and so let me read the public comment statement. Now is the time for public comment on the portion of this meeting. Anyone who wishes to make comments related to items not on the agenda or on the consent agenda should have submitted your online speaker card by now. 3 minutes will be allowed for the city clerk to read your comments into the record. If you're participating in tonight's meeting via Zoom, please use the Raise Your Hand feature visible on your screen, or if you're calling in, press *9. At this time, I'll ask the city clerk whether any comments have been received via the online comment cards or whether anyone has raised their hand.
I have no online comments, but Mr. Reuter has raised his hand, so we'll see if he has a comment at this time.
None at this point. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So that'll be it for public comment. I will now hand it over to Ms. Shea for her presentation.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
If I could begin with a short introduction before our finance director gives her presentation.
Sure.
So we've had the opportunity, staff has had the opportunity to present this to 2 committees, your Budget and Governance Committee and the Budget Advisory Committee. In my relatively short experience here, generally we would bring to the council an action item to give you the opportunity to take action based on the presentation and the recommendation of those two committees. Given the significant economic situation that we are facing, we asked the council to schedule this study session to give you an additional opportunity tonight to discuss these issues before you are asked to take action. We will be looking for action at your June 2nd meeting based on the discussion that we hear from you tonight. But we did want to have this special time to walk you through with a little bit more detail and time, given the significant economic situation and frankly, fiscal crisis for the region and the country. So as is obvious, the pandemic has created an economic shock, and unfortunately, the city of Emeryville's primary revenue sources are most vulnerable to the type of economic shock that we're experiencing. Those revenues are sales tax, hotel tax, and business license tax. The city is facing a substantial revenue shortfall this fiscal year and early next fiscal year. It's currently projected to be about $15.2 million. This assumes that we see an economic recovery by the holidays in December. Unfortunately, no one knows how long this economic recovery will take and how much of the economy will actually recover. Emeryville is in a fortunate situation thanks to this council's prudent fiscal policies that you've had in place for several years now that set aside one-time funds, primarily accumulated commercial transfer tax. What you will hear tonight is staff's proposal to suspend those policies temporarily and apply some of those one-time funds to cover these current revenue shortfalls. This is essentially a bridging strategy to give all of us time to assess how long this economic recovery will take. We will need to come back to the full council on at least a quarterly basis next fiscal year to assess how we're doing, to discuss how we need to react to that, and give us the ability to make different decisions if we need to do that. The next report to this council should be in September, and we will be asking the Budget and Governance Committee to hold special meetings as well. I would like to turn this over to Susan Shea to give a more detailed presentation. We are both available to answer questions, but I thank you for giving me the time to provide that overview. Susan?
Yes, Sherry, can you pull up the slides? Next slide, please. Good evening, Mayor and Council members. This slide presents the agenda for tonight's presentation. Before we review the budget adjustments, I will provide an overview about the budget and the budget balancing strategies. Towards the end of the presentation, we'll discuss the Section 115 OPEC Trust. After the presentation, staff would like to receive feedback from the City Council. Next slide, please. The COVID-19 pandemic created economic implosion and caused volatility in the stock market. The U.S. unemployment rate jumped up to 14.7% in April from 4.4% in March. The California Department of Finance projected $54.3 billion in budget deficit. Next slide, please. Due to the shutdown of economic activities, there are negative impacts on business. In turn, the city's revenues are also impacted. The city's revenue major revenue sources, including sales tax, hotel tax, business license tax, and carbon tax, are expected to be significantly impacted. Next slide, please. The general fund revenue shortfalls are projected at $15.2 million over a 2-year period. This projected loss is before netting increases from other projected revenues, such as projected increases in other revenue categories, such as property tax. The estimated loss for fiscal year 2020 is $6.8 million, or 15% of the general fund annual budget. The estimated loss for fiscal year 2021 is $8.4 million, or 19% of the general fund annual budget. The combined shortfall is higher than PD's $14.7 million annual budget. Next slide, please. The budget proposed to use short-term bridging strategies to balance the budget. This will provide the city time to assess the timing and strength of an economic recovery. The strategies range from the use of one-time revenues, use of capital project money, interfund transfers, to hiring freeze. I will summarize the strategies and present the amounts later. Use one-time residential property transfer tax from fiscal year 2020. Draw down funds from the pension reserve in fiscal years 2020 and 2021. Transfer funds from the Workers' Compensation Fund in fiscal year 2021. This fund has a healthy fund balance due to positive claim experience. Next slide, please. Suspend. Sherry, can you go back to the previous slide? Suspend the excess commercial property transfer tax policy for the budget cycles 2017-19, 2019-21, and use one-time commercial property transfer tax revenue to help balance the budget. Use capital project money from an inactive project to balance the budget. Cancel general fund contributions to the pension reserve in fiscal years 2020 and 2021. Cancel general fund contribution to the litigation fund in fiscal year 2021. This fund also has a healthy fund balance. Free 6 vacant positions. Next slide, please. The combined budget balancing strategies and other proposed revenue and expenditure adjustments resulted in general fund net revenue adjustment of $1.4 million in fiscal year 2020. The net expenditure adjustment is $1.2 million. The net revenue adjustment for fiscal year 2021 is $1.1 million, and the net expenditure adjustment is $888,000. This is a balanced 2-year general fund budget. The projected surplus from the adopted budget is gone. Next slide, please. This slide presents the revenue strategies. The first strategy is to use general fund residential property transfer tax to balance the budget. The city generated more than $2.1 million in one-time revenue due to a large real estate transfer action. The second strategy is to transfer $549,000 from the pension reserve in fiscal year 2020 and $824,000 in fiscal year 2021. Transfer $500,000 from the Workers' Compensation Fund in fiscal year 2021. Transfer $2.4 million from the Capital Project Fund in fiscal year 2020 and $700,000 in fiscal year 2021. The total is $3.1 million. This amount is from the excess commercial property transfer tax revenue generated in the 2017-19 budget cycle. Transfer $3 million from the Capital Project Fund in fiscal year 2021. This $3 million is expected to be generated in the current fiscal year. The revenue belongs to the 2019-21 budget cycle. The proposal is to suspend the excess commercial property transfer tax policy for the 2017-19 and 2019-21 budget cycles and use the funds to balance the general fund budget. The last proposal is to transfer $1.3 million from the fire station upgrade project in fiscal year 2021. The total for fiscal year 2020 is $5.1 million, and the total for fiscal year 2021 is about $6.4 million. Next slide, please. Before I present the general fund revenue adjustments, I want to present the key revenue assumptions that are used for the projections. Due to shelter-in-place orders, no business activities or slow activities are expected between mid-March to June 2020. Slow activities are also expected between July to September 2020. Sales tax, hotel tax, utility users tax, franchise fees, and program revenues are expected to be significantly impacted. For example, the reduction for sales tax revenue is close to 25% of the adopted budget. The reduction for hotel tax is 30% of the adopted budget. Business license tax is expected to be significantly impacted in fiscal year 2021. Fiscal year 2021 business tax are calculated based on calendar year 2020 gross receipts. Due to shelter-in-place orders and social distancing requirements, current tax revenues are expected to be significantly impacted in both fiscal years. A 30% reduction in the current fiscal year and a 50% reduction in the next fiscal year. Property tax revenue is not expected to be significantly impacted in both fiscal years. We may see a reduction in supplemental property tax due to lower construction activities. We may see potential moderate decline in fiscal year 2022 if the assessed values are reduced. 65% decline in real estate transactions are expected in the current quarter and in the first quarter of next fiscal year. Next slide, please. This slide presents the general fund revenue adjustments. Sales tax revenues are expected to decrease by $1.9 million in each fiscal year. Hotel tax revenues are expected to decrease by $2.7 million in the current fiscal year and $2.4 million in the next fiscal year. There are so many uncertainties related to this revenue category. We don't know when the travel industry will return to normal. We also need to account for local factors such as large events in San Francisco and flights into Oakland. We'll continue to maintain contacts with the hotels to understand the revenue trends and the occupancy rates. Business license tax is not expected to be impacted in the current fiscal year, and a 25% reduction is expected in the next fiscal year. That reduction amounted to $1.6 million. Utility users tax revenues are expected to reduce by about $230,000 in each fiscal year. The increase in residential usage is not expected to be able to offset the decrease in business usage due to the city's heavy concentration on business. Current tax revenues are expected to reduce by $864,000 in the current fiscal year and $1.5 million in the next fiscal year. We don't expect the quorum to return to normal operations anytime soon. License and permits revenues are expected to increase in both fiscal years due to higher than expected development activities. Please note that a portion of the increase is related to cost recovery projects, and the increase is going to be offset by the increase in expenditures. Property tax revenue is expected to increase in both fiscal years due to the increase in assessed value. Residual tax increment is expected to increase in both fiscal years, primarily due to the denial of funding requests for the Corporation Yard remediation project for fiscal year 2020-21. The Department of Finance sent the city a rejection letter back in April. Please note that the allocation to the general fund will be increased from 25% to 50% in the next fiscal year. Franchise fees from waste management are expected to decrease by about $260,000 in each fiscal year. Due to shelter-in-place orders, many businesses suspended services or reduced the services. Vehicle license fee is from property tax, and the revenue is expected to increase in both fiscal years. 65% decline in real estate transactions is expected in the current fiscal year and in the first quarter of next fiscal year. The 1.7 million adjustment for the current fiscal year reflects the 2.1 million large transaction that I mentioned to you earlier, offset by 400,000 reduction. The adjustments for other revenues are mainly due to decreases for recreation revenues, about 430,000 in the current fiscal year and 240,000 in the next fiscal year due to shelter-in-place orders. The adjustment for the current fiscal year also includes about 800,000 reduction for parking revenues. Since the program has not implemented, the amount is reduced from the budget. The transfers in of 2.9 million and the 6.4 million represent contributions from other funds, and I presented those amounts earlier. Next slide, please. This slide presents the expenditure strategies. Before I present the cancellation of transfers to other funds, I want to advise the City Council that we need to transfer 44,000 to the pivot fund due to the increase in general benefit contribution. We also need to transfer 110,000 to the accrued benefits fund due to higher than expected retirement payouts. To balance the budget, staff proposed to cancel the transfers to the pension reserve fund in both fiscal years and cancel the transfer to the litigation fund in fiscal year 2021. The net total is 235,000 for fiscal year 2020 and 558,000 for fiscal year 2021. Next slide, please. The last strategy is to free 6 vacant positions to achieve savings. The list includes 2 police officer trainees, 1 parking manager, 1 planning technician, 1 building inspector, and 1 office assistant position. The savings are estimated at 670,000. This slide presents the general fund expenditure adjustments. Please note that the adjustments reflect COLA increases per the city's new labor agreements with the employee groups. And the adjustments include savings from vacant positions. The adjustment for PD for the current fiscal year includes 579,000 in overtime costs related to response to COVID-19. I will present the significant adjustments, the ones highlighted in yellow. The adjustments for public works are mainly due to the parking management program. Since the program has not been implemented, the expenditures are backed out from current year's budget and are included in next year's budget. The reductions for non-departmental operations are mainly due to the cancellation of transfers that I presented to you earlier. And the adjustments include a reduction for general liability insurance premiums and the redistribution of COLA and benefits to other departments. When the budget was adopted, the projected increase in COLA and benefits were budgeted in this department. The increase for PD in the current fiscal year includes the 579,000 overtime costs, offset by savings from vacant positions. That's why the increase is only 48,000. The increase in the next fiscal year is primarily due to an increase in overtime costs. The overtime costs are expected to be reimbursed from business for community special events. The reductions for community services are mainly due to shelter-in-place orders. Many of the programs were closed or services were reduced. Next slide, please. This slide presents the adjustments to other funds. The COVID-19 pandemic is not only impacting the general fund revenues, it is also impacting the revenues in other funds. The gas tax revenue and SB1 revenue from the state are expected to be reduced due to lower gas consumption. The Child Development Center was closed and revenues are expected to be reduced. We also expect some savings due to the closure of the center. Measure B and BB revenues will be impacted as well because those revenues are derived from sales tax revenues. The Alameda County Transportation Commission is estimating a 15% reduction in the current fiscal year and a 25% reduction in the next fiscal year. The rent revenues from the marina are also impacted due to the closure of business. Before leaving this slide, I want to present the adjustments for the general capital fund. The 3.8 million revenue adjustment for the current fiscal year is related to projected increase in tax income and revenue and projected increase in commercial property transfer tax revenue. Commercial property transfer tax revenue is expected to be 3.2 million higher than the adopted budget. The 2.7 million expenditure adjustment is related to a 2.4 million transfer into the general fund and an allocation to the Horton Landing Park project for 1.7 million, offset by the cancellation of appropriation for the fire station upgrade project. It's 1.3 million. The revenue adjustment for the next fiscal year is due to the projected increase in tax income and revenue. The 5 million expenditure adjustment is related to transfers into the general fund, and I presented those amounts earlier. Next slide, please. This slide presents the adjustments to capital projects. I will point out the significant adjustments. The park impact fee has not accumulated sufficient revenue to support the Horton Landing Park expansion project. Staff is proposing to cancel 1.7 million in prior appropriation and replace the funding source with funds from the general capital fund. The revenue is related to excess commercial transfer tax revenue generated in the 2017-2019 budget cycle. The 1.3 million is related to cancellation of appropriation for the fire station upgrade project. The funds will be used to balance the general fund budget. Next slide, please. Before the COVID-19 pandemic, the Budget and Governance Committee recommend establishing a 3 million trust with PAWS to reduce the OPEB liability and achieve higher investment returns in the long run. Staff recommends establishing a trust when the economy is back to normal to avoid market volatility and economic uncertainty. Next slide, please. It's really likely that we will see increases in unfunded pension liability and contributions due to CalPERS investment loss. CalPERS assumed the rate of return is 7%. For the fiscal year ended June 2019, the actual return was 6.7%. Because the return is lower than the 7%, the contribution will increase effective July 1st, 2021. For the current fiscal year, CalPERS was projecting a negative 4% return in March, and the picture looked better in April. The best estimate for CalPERS is to achieve around 0% return at the end of the current fiscal year. Because the return is going to be lower than 7%, the contribution will go up effective July 1st, 2022. Because the actuary valuation report is 2 years behind, that's why the increase is not effective in the next fiscal year. Next slide, please. This slide presents the projected increases in unfunded accrued liability payments for the city's classic police, fire, and miscellaneous plans. The city's pension contribution is made up of two parts, including normal costs and amortization payment of unfunded accrued liability. Normal cost represents benefits earned by active participants within the current fiscal year. The cost is calculated based on a percentage of payroll. Amortization payment of unfunded accrued liability represents payment to reduce any shortfalls between the liability and past services and assets. Investment loss increase unfunded accrued liability. The amounts presented here do not represent normal costs. The amounts represent unfunded accrued liability contributions. As I mentioned earlier, the increase is effective July 1st, 2022, due to current year's loss. If the return is 7%, we will pay CalPERS $3.9 million. If the investment return is 0%, the cost will go up by $236,000. If the investment return is a negative 4%, the cost will go up by $371,000. The increase in the first year represents 20% of the annual amortization amount. CalPERS has a 5-year ramp-up strategy. You pay 20% in the first year, you pay 40% in the second year, you pay 60% in the third year, you pay 80% in the fourth year, and you pay 100% in the fifth year. That's why the amounts go up to $1.2 million and $1.8 million in fiscal year 2026, 2027. Please note that these amounts do not account for changes in normal costs. Normal costs can also go up due to changes of assumptions such as mortality. These amounts also do not assume smoothing strategies that CalPERS may implement in order to reduce the financial impacts on agencies. Next slide, please. We may also see potential increases in medical premiums and workers' compensation costs due to the pandemic. The projections that we presented to you tonight are based on the most likely scenarios and include a number of assumptions. These assumptions may change depending on the development of the pandemic. Staff will take proactive steps to monitor revenues and expenditures and develop other budget balancing strategies if needed. Staff is planning to provide regular updates to the committees and the City Council in the next fiscal year. Next slide, please. The revised budget was presented to the Budget and Governance Committee on May 12th and to the Budget Advisory Committee on May 14th. There were no recommended changes from the two committees. The two committees request the staff to monitor revenues and expenditures closely and provide regular financial updates. They also request the staff to develop effective strategies to weather challenges as needed. Next slide, please. This concludes my presentation. Staff would like to receive direction and feedback from the City Council.
Thank you. Questions or comments before I open it up to the public? Just go ahead and wave at me and I'll call on you. Nobody. Okay. Sherry, have we gotten Scott back on the line?
I was just checking for that.
Great.
I don't see him.
Okay. All right. Do we have any public comment on this item?
No, we do not. And I'm getting your messages to disable the chat, and I am trying to do that. But not sure how. If anybody knows how to, please let me know.
Okay, sorry. Discussion. I think I will start us off by saying, thank you for that presentation. I really want to appreciate staff's forward thinking in this. I think we have jumped on it, and I appreciate my colleagues on having set aside. I remember when we made these tough decisions to put aside these different funds. So thank you. I want to shout out a thank to the Budget Committee for their hard work, because I think their work has put us into the position we're in today, where while we're in for some hard times, we will be fine. So with that, do we have any other council member comments? Member Martinez?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had I'm not going to say pleasure, getting this presentation at Budget and Governance, but I just wanted to say that I think that staff made some sound recommendations. I think that it's hard to come up with assumptions on what our revenue stream is going to look like in the short term. So as Christine introduced at the beginning, staff and council will be looking at everything closely, as things change. So I appreciate staff bringing forward this as a bridging strategy. And I'm really, I'm grateful that we're not asking our full-time workers to bear the brunt of the financial troubles that we're facing right now.
Great, thank you. Anybody else? Otherwise, we will call this meeting. All right, go back to my agenda. With that, I will close the study session. It is 7:08. I think we have 7 minutes until our next meeting.
Oh yeah, shake babe, shake that thing, shake that thing, shake that thing. Wow, come on right now, baby, shake right now, shake right now.
Where there's no place I can hide. This is 7-Inch Soul on Soma FM.
Yes, I am. That's all I am. I'm just your part-time lover. Yes, I am. Baby, that's all I am. I'm just your part-time lover, but I've got to win a full-time job. I'm loving you, baby. Now I go out on the town. When I get tired of staying home all alone, then I see you with him, baby. And I feel a hurting deep down in my bones. I see you hugging and kissing, but it's nothing I can say. And when you pass by, I have to look the other way, 'cause I'm just your part-time lover. Yes, I am. That's all I am. I'm just your part-time lover. Yes, I am, baby. That's all I am. I'm just your part-time lover, but I've got to win a full-time job. Yes, I do. Now you know that you told me that your love for me is still strong, but you say you can't let him go, baby. Not until he does something wrong. Meanwhile, I can only be with you when he's out of town, and I have to suffer whenever he's around, 'cause I'm just your part-time lover. Yes, I am. That's all I am. I don't wanna be your, no, I don't, baby. I want you all to myself now. Yes, I do, baby. I don't wanna be your alcohol. I gotta have a little talk with you. I wanna treat you just like you treated me. Alcohol.
Okay. I would like to call to order at 7:15 the successor agency regular meeting. Do we need a roll call?
Yes, I think so.
Okay, would you please do that?
Councilmember Bouders? Okay, I see he's gesturing. Let me, I've got your phone on. You should be able to speak on your phone.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I'm here.
Okay, Councilmember Donahue's still not with us, but he's trying. Councilmember Medina? Councilmember Medina?
I'm here.
And Vice Mayor Martinez?
I'm here.
Mayor Pats?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
I'm here. Thank you. Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
And I'll second it. So we have a motion and a second to approve the agenda. Vote, please.
Councilmember Bouders? Councilmember Donahue?
Aye.
Councilmember Donahue is absent. Councilmember Medina?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Martinez?
Aye.
And Mayor Pats?
Aye. Okay. Any ex parte communications on the successor agency? Seeing none. Okay. And so the consent calendar, do I have, oh, public comment, I'm sorry, do we have any public comment, Sherry?
We do not.
Excellent. Do I have a motion and a second for the consent calendar?
So moved.
And I'll go ahead and second. We have a motion.
Second.
Oh, great. Motion from Member Martinez, second from Member Medina.
Councilmember Bouders?
Aye.
Councilmember Donahue is absent. Councilmember Medina?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Martinez?
Aye.
And Mayor Pats?
Aye. And with that, it is 7:17, and I adjourn the successor agency meeting. Let everybody catch their breath, and I will call to order the regular meeting. It is 7:18, and do we need a roll call?
No, I don't think we do. Thank you.
Excellent. Okay, can I have a motion for approval of the agenda?
So moved.
I'll go ahead and second. We have a motion and a second for the agenda.
I'll second.
She did
Okay.
that while drinking a glass of water.
Okay, I beg your pardon. Are we on the approval of final agenda?
Yes, we are.
Okay, thanks. Councilmember Bouders?
Aye.
Councilmember Donahue is absent. Councilmember Medina? Vice Mayor Martinez?
Aye.
And Mayor Pats.
Aye. Sherry, do you need me to pause for a moment so you can catch up? I am perfectly happy to do that.
Yeah, I think that might be a good idea for the moment. Thank you.
Yep, no problem. Everybody turn off your camera and stretch if you need to. We'll be back in just a second.
Annual recruitment for expiring terms on our committees and commissions. That application period will be open until May 25th, and council will make its appointments at the first meeting in June. Thank you.
Great. Okay. Any council members have special announcements or committees attended? Mr. Bouders.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a few things. First, I just wanted to let the public know that the Berkeley Humane Society was made a Northern California distribution center for the distribution of pet food to people who have pets that are in financial crisis and unable to afford pet food. If you'd like to make an appointment, you can do that one of two ways, either by visiting berkeleyhumane.org or by calling area code 510-845-7735 to make an appointment at their location at 2700 9th Street. The other thing is that the Alameda County Transportation Commission, the committees on policy and legislation, approved for recommendation to the full board for later this month a vote that would give small cities, including Emeryville, a path on the match for construction projects. So instead of the city having to put up a portion of money to match grants that we receive, the county would pay that portion of it. Those are my updates. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Great, thank you. Any other members, committees attended, or special announcements? Member Martinez.
I don't think I noted in our last meeting that, or maybe I did, but I'll say it again. East Bay Community Energy did not accept a nuclear allotment from PG&E for the year 2020, and that may be of note for some members of our community who reached out and were against that.
Excellent. Okay. Member Medina? No? Okay. I attended the Alameda County Housing Authority Commission meeting, and I'm excited. They will be announcing they have a new director coming up soon, so that was the big news. With all that's going on, everything else is really in a holding pattern. But once again, I'll be participating in their annual scholarships as one of the judges determining who gets scholarships. As always, we've had a couple of applicants from Emeryville. It's actually the best part of that job. So that was there. Member Donahue, I see you have joined us. Have you attended any committee meetings, or do you have any special announcements?
No special announcements.
Okay. All right. Thank you, guys. I'm glad to have you aboard. City Manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councilmember Bowers, for mentioning the Berkeley Humane Society. For those of you who weren't able to catch that, we will be posting that information on the city's website, as well as we think there's a lot of people in Emeryville who might be interested. So thank the council members for sharing that.
Thank you. All right. All right. Ex parte communications. None. Okay. I have one. Let me find the agenda item number. On the last item of the day, 12.2, I spoke with school board member Susan Donaldson. Okay. And now I have lost my place. Coming back. Okay, public comment for the consent items or items not on the agenda. Let me read our quick statement here. Now is the time for public comment portion of this meeting. Anyone who wishes to make public comment related to items not on the agenda or on the consent agenda should have submitted your online speaker card by now. 3 minutes will be allowed for City Clerk to read your comments into the record. If you are participating in tonight's meeting via Zoom, please use the raise your hand feature visible on your screen, or if you are calling in, press *9. At this time, I will ask the City Clerk whether any comments have been received via the online comment card or whether anyone has raised their hand to make audio comments.
Mr. Mayor, I do have one that came in via the online speaker card, so I will read it into the record and time it.
Excellent.
This comment is from Tira Woody Kogsamut, and I apologize if that was not a good pronunciation. I wish to comment about public safety and Essex property management. Honorable council members, thank you for taking my comment. My partner and I are residents at the courtyards at 65th Street, 1465 65th Street, and I am commenting today in regards to Essex Property Management, which owns and operates 3 large apartment complexes in Emeryville, the Courtyards, Emmy, and Avenue 64. These 3 buildings comprise about 750 units and may represent a substantial portion of Emeryville residents. Essex management of the courtyards is poorly organized, negligent, and contributes to public safety and health hazards that harm citizens and draw the city's resources. I draw upon the example of my most recent personal experience with management in response to the theft of my bicycle, which I rely on for transportation as I do not own a car and am avoiding public transit during the pandemic. My bike was stolen from a secure indoor location on premises, locked to a metal railing in an area to which only residents should have access. The railing itself was cut through. I communicated my loss to the office immediately and requested that the railing be fixed immediately, as other residents' bicycles were now also vulnerable. 5 days later, I spoke with maintenance people directly, and the office had never communicated the issue to them. Staff in the office turn over frequently, often rotate among multiple properties, and specialize in leasing, not building management, meaning there is no accountability. Essex frequently exploits this model, and staff are experts at passing the buck. Staff claimed they were unable to notify residents of the vulnerability of bikes locked in similar places. They refused to tell me whether there were security cameras that could potentially aid an investigation, and engaged in victim blaming for the theft. This behavior is typical of Essex's response to all resident concerns, ranging from security to sanitation to maintenance. Management's response to this specific incident is a perfect representation of Essex's standard of care for its residents, and there are many other instances of this which cannot be addressed in a single public comment. Essex claims that they have implemented appropriate security measures by installing security cameras and having Silicon Valley Security patrol the area irregularly and spread among multiple Essex properties. These measures have been ineffective at deterring crime or bringing criminals to justice, as there have been a slew of car break-ins and other property crime within supposedly secure areas. Emeryville police have responded to many issues with garage and building security and would have more detail on the number and nature of different incidents. Management has been wholly unsupportive of residents, leaving tenants to try to organize ourselves to hold Essex accountable and to rely on ex post actions such as asking Emeryville PD to increase patrols or submitting to public comment at Emeryville City Council. Tenants have been powerless in holding Essex accountable. There's just a couple more sentences. Shall I go on? Tenants have been powerless in holding Essex accountable and in the tight Bay Area rental market. Many of us do not have the luxury of simply moving down the street or risking our creditworthiness on rent strikes. I ask that the City Council use available policy levers or ability to enforce public safety standards to ensure that Essex improve its service to residents and bear accountability for its incompetence. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to share my contact information with the Council if I can be of additional assistance.
Thank you. Any other public comment, Sherry?
Let me double check. I do have one hand raised. This is a phone number ending in 1281. Did you have a public comment?
No, not at this time. I was just testing to make sure I'm able to comment on future items. Thank you.
All right.
Okay. Member Bowders, go ahead.
Just a question for the clerk.
Madam Clerk, will you be able to provide us any comments that are submitted to you on a card in writing? Can you send those to all council members so that we have the benefit of seeing all of them?
Certainly. Anything that comes in writing, of course.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. All right, was that the last public comment? So I now look for a motion for the consent agenda.
I move the consent agenda.
I have a motion from Member Donahue and a second from Member Bowders.
Councilmember Bowders?
Aye.
Councilmember Donahue?
Aye.
Councilmember Medina?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Martinez?
Aye.
And Mayor Pats.
Aye. Okay, that brings us up to our public hearings. We have no public hearings this evening. So we're at action items. Item 12.1, committee reports to the City Council. First up is the BPAC committee. City manager, okay, there we go. I want to fill the awkward silence with my talking, but nobody wants that. Who is presenting for this item? Do we have a member of the BPAC here?
I believe Jacqueline Haar is, and I've just allowed her to talk.
Oh, excellent. Welcome. Jacqueline, are you there? Allie, are you ready to jump in if we need you?
Yeah, I could. I haven't seen this report yet, but I can read off a slide.
We'll give Jacqueline a moment. I'm sure she'll be with us. And I do appreciate it and understand the challenges with a new system this week.
Yeah, my apologies. We did have a staff person on the call earlier.
Zoe is also on the call-in. Zoe.
Okay, I can, let me.
Hi, Zoe.
Wait, Zoe is not on. Hold on.
I would
There's, yeah?
Zoe was here
I would just
and
note,
now she's gone.
our experience is that if you have unmuted the speaker at other ACTC, this has happened. It usually means they have their computer monitor or their phone, they have their own device on mute. It's not usually you.
Right. I wonder, I've got Matt Anderson. I don't know if he...
I see Zoe here. Can we unmute her?
I see Jacqueline still on the attendees.
She is, but
Right,
there's
she's
no
not.
option. Let me unmute Zoe. Beg your pardon.
Wait, I don't think Zoe's on.
There she is. She's unmuted.
Hi everyone, this is Zoe Chafe. I am not on this committee, but I do live with someone who's on the committee.
I know, but do you have someone nearby you who is?
Yes, just give me 1 minute, please.
No worries.
That's our workaround, guys.
And it looks like Nancy Humphrey is on too, if she can be of any help.
Okay.
Hello, is everyone there?
Yes.
Hey, thanks, Seven.
Great, I hear I am giving this report. This is not what I expected, but that is great. Cool. So here's our goals, principles, and accomplishments for 2019, as well as our priorities for 2020. Do you go to the next slide, or do I?
I'll move it for you,
Oh, awesome. Thank you.
I think. Okay, that is the next slide.
Thank you for jumping in at the last minute. We do appreciate that.
Yeah, for sure. It's, yeah, and or I can maybe I can go. No, I can't.
You can't move it. No, it has to be Sherry.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Shall I back up and we start over again from the beginning?
Well, we're still on slide one. We want to go to slide 2.
You should be seeing BPAC goals and principles.
Yep, we want the next one now.
Evan, are you there?
I'm here, Sherry, yeah. If you could go to the next slide, that would be awesome, because I don't have it memorized.
We are not seeing goals and principles. We're still on the annual report.
You might need to enable editing to move. You're not in.
You're not in present mode.
So I am screen sharing the presentation.
Right, but the presentation needs to be in presentation mode. You're in edit mode. Oh.
Perfect. If you could, oh, awesome.
Perfect.
Is that better?
That is wonderful. I think, can you go back one slide though?
So that's...
Sherry, I still see BPAC accomplishments, but we have one slide before that.
Yeah,
we have the BPAC goals and principles slide.
So that's what I'm showing, what's showing on the screen here. I don't...
We're seeing accomplishments.
So maybe you're presenting and we're just seeing sort of the PowerPoint presentation. So it's fine to just look at the PowerPoint presentation if you get out of present mode, at least for me, that's fine. Perfect, wonderful, got it. Cool, so our goals and principles are pretty straightforward, is that we're all about improving access, improving infrastructure, and also increasing safety for people who choose active transportation in the city. Going on to the next slide. Awesome, thanks. Cool, so here's some accomplishments. So we ran a walking tour and got lots of feedback both from people on the committee and just general community members who walked with us over so near the Christie Powell intersection, and we've continued to meet on that and have made various recommendations as a result of that walk. We also have given feedback to ACTC on the San Pablo Avenue multimodal corridor design. So various of us have attended ACTC meetings, and next is feedback on the ONI project. So we also suggested that the project be thought of as being more people-friendly. Right now it's a very car-centric development, and we gave suggestions to make it more people-centered. Other accomplishments, a small one but important, we had a community member who came and said, hey, we can't bike through Spur Alley anymore because the gate is too long, and working with the city, we got it shortened. Another was that we recommended Emeryville change the mounting of the bike racks so that they're lower on buses, so that people who are not able to lift their bikes as high can still take Emeryville with bikes, and Emeryville implemented that on all the buses that they could. Another is various BBAC members, as well as a group, have engaged on the Ashby Interchange project in order to make that as safe as possible for people who want to walk or bike. Next, we also made recommendations on the 40th Street redesign, which I'm very excited that City Council has moved forward with, and staff has presented a great plan. Next is this BBAC priorities for 2020. So we'll continue to identify the areas which make the city unsafe for people who are either walking or biking. In addition, we would like to not only sort of look at the areas, but also look at what we can do on the education front in order to increase the access and, to walking and biking in the city. Next is we're going to continue to work on the Powell-Christie corridor, because we know that a lot of those intersections are unsafe, and want people of all ages to feel comfortable crossing the street. Next is I guess this is a big one. We're going to start working on the bike ped plan update. So that will be, I think, a 2-year process. It'll be 2020, 2021. And then finally, we will work with the planning department to think about how people who walk and bike can be considered both during the construction and once projects are completed. So next slide, please. Cool. Other priorities are we are going to work with Berkeley and Oakland so that great infrastructure and education and access is not only happening within our city but also in neighboring cities. We want to continue working towards a plan where no people who are walking or biking are killed or disabled in accidents with automobiles or with trucks. Next is we are going to do another tour. This one will be a bike tour that's meant to engage both community members and visitors who don't always attend our meetings, so that we can get additional feedback about ways that we can improve the experience for people walking and biking. Next is safety at key intersections. So again, this is, intersections like 40th and San Pablo or Christie and Powell, which have historically experienced a good number of injuries and sometimes fatalities. And then the last one is working to reduce car traffic within and through Emeryville, so that people can safely and comfortably bike and walk in the city, regardless of their age or their ability. Next slide, please. Cool. And so here's our first highlighted priority, which is this new revision of the bike ped plan. This will in turn update the general plan and is a really important planning document for the city as we think about the next 10 or 15 years. Next slide. Our second highlighted priority is to continue to identify problem areas for people who walk and bike, so that people who walk and bike are safe, and more and more people can access the wonderful areas here, whether it's being close to the water or walking on the greenway. Lots of special places here. Next slide. Cool. And finally, our conclusion is to our goal, as you see, is to really increase the quality of life for anyone who finds himself in Emeryville for whatever reason. People walking, biking, and riding transit should be able to move safely about the city, regardless of age, physical ability, race, sex, gender, sexual orientation, religion, national origin, or immigration status. So this is a little bit more sort of far-reaching than our introduction, and the reason why we have all these different things here is because it's not just about infrastructure, but it's also about making sure that all of the city police, etc., works together to make this a safe place, regardless of who somebody is. So that's about it. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Excellent job stepping at the last minute. Great presentation. I really do appreciate everybody working together on that. And I want to thank the committee. I will open it up now to member questions and then go to public comment. 3, 2, 1. All right, public comment on this item, Sherry.
I have no online submittals, but I do have 2 folks who have raised their hand. So last 4 digits, 1281. Did you have a comment to make on this item?
Yes, I do. I listened closely to the presentation just now, and I noticed that it seems like bicycling is fantastic in Emeryville. There was a lot of feel-good stuff there. It's a lot of information about how great Emeryville is doing for bicycling and how wonderful it all is, and how everybody is safe, and bicycling is safe and wonderful in our city. And so it's the kind of report that elected officials like to hear. But is there any way to know whether or not it's accurate? In other words, was that a bunch of fluff, or might there be something more to the story? And is there any way to know for sure? And the answer is yes, there is a way to know for sure, and that is the bike plan that we have. I heard nothing from the speaker who told us what the BPAC has been doing over the last year about the bike boulevard situation. And that's in their purview, to make sure that to improve safety and infrastructure for bicycling in Emeryville. He said it himself. So what's wrong with the bike boulevard system in Emeryville? Well, on 45th Street and on 53rd Street, we don't have bike boulevards, but we're supposed to. The city has known for almost 3 years now that there's an excess amount of vehicle traffic on those 2 putative bike boulevards, and yet the city has done nothing to ameliorate the problem. And what is the city supposed to do? It's supposed to follow the guidelines of the bike plan, which says that if there's excess amount of traffic, the city is supposed to implement the next level of traffic calming measures. As it is right now, those 2 bike boulevards are at level 3. So we've known now for almost 3 years the city needs to move to level 4 to lower the amount of traffic volume, and the city has done nothing, completely nothing. And now we know the BPAC is totally unconcerned with that. So I don't see how the BPAC can make a presentation saying with so much good talk and so much self-congratulating back, patting themselves on the back about keeping, bicycling safe, when there's this huge glaring problem of the plan that they're supposed to be custodians of. So I've gotten used to the fact that the council doesn't care about the bike boulevard system, but to hear the BPAC. I mean, they're supposed to care. And I don't know why the BPAC does not look at the bike plan that they're supposed to be protecting and implementing and recommending that the council implement. So I've lost total faith with the council, but the BPAC itself, that's pretty shocking. So we heard all this talk about how they're working to reduce car traffic as a big goal for 2020. So if that's their goal, and I'm talking to the BPAC members, if that's your goal, I suggest you look at your own, the city's bike pedestrian plan and implement the bike boulevard system that we have, especially 45th Street Bike Boulevard and the 53rd Street Bike Boulevard. So can we please get the bike plans followed or amended to get rid of them? Because this is glaring inconsistency. It really irks me to hear all this happy talk when there's these glaring safety problems for bicyclists in Emeryville. Thank you very much.
May I respond to that?
Not at this time, no.
Okay.
Thank you, though. Sherry, any other public comment?
I do have one other raised hand from San Francisco Data Science. I'll check to see whether they are meaning to talk on this item.
I saw them for a moment.
I know, and now they've disappeared. I guess that means no.
Okay. Just because of technical things, if they do come back later, we will happily take their comment. I think they did an earnest effort.
Yes.
And I appreciate that. Member comments, and I'm going to start with Member Medina because she's on this committee, I believe.
Yeah, first of all, I'd like to thank Evan for jumping in and doing an impromptu presentation. Really appreciate your flexibility on that one. I also would say, I go to these BPAC meetings monthly. They're, one of our longest committee meetings because this is a group of people incredibly dedicated to making biking and walking better and safer in Emeryville. They don't spend 3 hours blowing smoke at me. I guarantee you it is 3 hours of let's pick apart every single plan possible and give hard input on how it can be better. Let's spend a ton of our personal time biking and walking around the city. Let's spend tons of time looking at our general plan and our bike plan, constantly talking about how we can do a better bike plan update when that opportunity rolls around and preparing for that. I find it extremely offensive to suggest that they are not 100% dedicated to making things safer, and they're certainly not the most laudatory group we have. They are critical, and they're what we need.
Excellent, thank you. Would any other member of the council, Member Donahue?
But I have just some questions. How have we done in our accident rate for pedestrians and bicyclists? In other words, we have some indication of number of bicyclists and pedestrians on our streets, I assume. We certainly have bike counts for bike to work day. And how is that compared to our incidents of reported accidents over the last year? Are we doing better? We're getting more miles of walking and bicycling with less accidents, or do we have some measurement of this?
I don't know who to get to answer that. I think staff may have to get back to you on that. If it does that, I'm looking to you, City Manager, just because your video's on.
Mr. Mayor, yes, we can get back to you on that question, Councilmember Donahue, and provide you information, provide the whole council that information.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I don't want to put the substitute presenter on the spot with that. Member Martinez or Member Bowders, any questions or comments? Go ahead, Member Martinez, Vice Mayor Martinez.
Yeah, I just want to express my gratitude to the BPAC for the hefty workload they address, which is very, very important to the city. And right now with the pandemic, we're all out of our cars, so much more than we have been in the past. So I think more and more residents of Emeryville are seeing the benefits of the work that you do and the priority that the whole city places on pedestrian and bike friendliness.
Thank you. Member Batters, you raised your hand. Do you still have a comment?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I just want to thank the committee as well, and just for the benefit of the public, let them know that at ACTC, there's been a number of different agenda items that have come forward, including the San Pablo Avenue corridor study, for which our BPAC wrote a really comprehensive and thoughtful letter. They've opined on a number of issues at our suggestion and request, and sometimes on their own volition, that really have helped make them stand out, and they have earned a reputation as one of the more thoughtful entities on the bike ped front from the public agency side. And so I just want to thank them because it makes my advocacy work at ACTC really great. And I want to also thank Councilmember Medina for sticking it out for those really long meetings and really informing the Transportation Committee as a result.
Excellent. Well, I will wrap up with just a simple thank you and appreciate you, and let the next committee come on up, which I want to say is Housing Committee's annual report. And so, who is here representing housing?
The chair is Chris Owens, and I see her in the attendee list, so I'm not sure.
Oh, there they're coming.
There we go.
Okay. And Sherry, you'll bring up the slides for them?
Yes.
Sherry, this is Valerie. I'm also on the phone if need be.
Oh, excellent. Always good to have a backup, as we learned.
I've got Chris open, but maybe there's 2 links for her, so let's try this one.
Okay. And I'll start by saying thank you and welcome to both of you. And as soon as the presentation is up or you're ready to speak, go ahead. Sherry, do we have a PowerPoint?
Yes, we do. I'm bringing it up right now.
Excellent.
Mr. Mayor, if we could ask Chris to speak and see if we can hear her. I know there was some muting problems with the last presenter for BPAC.
Chris, are you there? It looks like the second one is still muted, so Sherry, if you can unmute Chris from the second one that you let in. Chris, are you there? Still on mute.
Okay, I apologize.
No worries. This is a learning experience for all of us.
For some reason, my window won't come back up.
Yeah, it's hard to share screen and manage people. I think next time we will set up a deal where we co-host. So 2 people.
Can you make Mike Parenti the co-host?
Because if you do, he can just take care of the letting people on and off, and you can just focus on the slides. I feel like maybe that would help us.
Yeah, I'm not able to unmute Chris. So Chris, is it possible that you can hear us and you have yourself muted?
I'm gonna jump to Valerie.
Oh.
And ask that she present. Are you willing to do that, Valerie?
Yeah, that's perfectly fine.
And apologies to Chris, but I do want to keep this moving. So go ahead, Valerie.
Okay. So Valerie Bernardo, I'm the secretary for the Housing Committee, and I'm going to stand in for Chris Owens, who is our chair, and present our Housing Committee's 2019 accomplishments as well as the goals for 2020. Next slide, please. Okay. The Housing Committee provides input and recommendations regarding city policies and priorities, and provides feedback related to the city's housing policies and programs. We meet once a month on the first Wednesday of every month at 6 p.m. if anybody is interested in participating in our meetings in the future. And currently our chair is Chris Owens, our vice chair is Henry Simons, and as I mentioned, I'm the secretary representing city council, representing city staff and the Department of Community Development and Division of Economic Development and Housing. Next slide, please. I wanted to start off by just providing a little bit of information on informational items that the committee reviews, because while there are specific things that we take action on, the committee does have a lot of information that comes before them for review and receives a lot of updates about housing projects that are ongoing. So they do get a monthly review of all of the major housing developments that are in the pipeline. We have had a general plan and housing element overview for the committee during one of our meetings. There has been a review of the elimination of the parking minimum requirements. There have been several updates provided over the year on the status of the 3706 San Pablo development, also known as Estrella Vista. There was a lottery and lease-up process, and information on the status of those were provided. There's been an update on the 4300 San Pablo temporary shelter site, as well as the RFQ and RFP for the 4300 San Pablo development project. There's been an update for the Omni Crispy development project. There also was a presentation on tall wood buildings. And then there also was an update on the CASA compact. Next slide, please. In regards to what the committee has accomplished, there are a variety of things that the committee is required to review on an annual basis. So during 2019, they did review and approve the 2018 annual calendar year report for the housing element progress report. That's an annual submission. So every year they do a review of that progress report. They also reviewed and approved the 2018 annual report for the housing successor activities before that went to City Council. They did a review of the 2015 to 2023 housing element. They provided recommendations to City Council in regards to the 2019 affordable housing table that identifies what affordable sales prices, rent limits, and income limits are for the city of Emeryville. And then they also provided a recommendation to City Council to approve a $2 million loan to RCD, a nonprofit, to acquire 3600, 3610, and 3620 San Pablo, which will be redeveloped into affordable housing in the future. Next slide, please. In 2020, we have quite a bit of priorities, and unfortunately this report was drafted at the beginning of the year, and so there's been a lot of changing activities due to COVID-19 that aren't reflected on here. So next year's report will have so much more on it than we see currently. But at that time, we identified our priorities to include making a recommendation for a developer to redevelop 4300 San Pablo. Where the committee will also review and provide recommendations to City Council to make changes to the first-time home buyer and below-market home ownership program. We hope to review housing bond funding program proposals. The committee also is looking to review more homeless policy issues. They're looking to review and make recommendations to City Council on any type of housing policy changes as they come up as needed. They will review and provide recommendations again to approve the 2020 housing affordability table for sales price, rent, and income limits. They will again approve and review the 2020 calendar year report on the housing element progress status. And then they will review and approve the 2020 annual report for the housing successor activities. Next slide, please. That's the end of the presentation. I did want to just identify all of the members of Emeryville who participated on the committee throughout the year. Everybody on the left is currently on the committee, and those that are on the right outside of Council Liaison John Bowders had been on the committee during the year but is not currently serving on the committee. And with that, I'll leave it open to any questions if there are any for me.
Great, thank you. That was an excellent job. And again, my apologies to Chris for not letting her present, but I will let council questions before I go to public comment, and then we'll do discussions. Seeing no council questions, Sherry, do we have any public comment?
We do have one raised hand. Let me see if that person wishes to comment on this item. Last four digits. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, before I get started, let me just say to Council Member Medina, so here I'm going to give you another chance to get offended at somebody that has the temerity to call in and criticize the city of Emeryville over bad public policy. I know it's offensive. Maybe whatever. Maybe you should locate yourself near a sofa so you won't hurt yourself if you faint. So the housing committee, again, we heard a lot of what they've been doing. It sounds like housing is fantastic in Emeryville. Nothing but good news, it sounds like. Again, might this be fluff? Might they be, it sounds like it's report directly from the elected officials themselves, is what it sounds like to me. But might there be another side to the story here? Well, yes, there is. You look at what's been happening to housing in Emeryville over the last many years. Well, we're moving from a city where a majority of home ownership into a city of majority renters. We're moving to a city that from a city filled with families. When for over a couple decades ago, to now a city of just singles and couples, no families. And could we have done something about this over the years? And can we still do something? Well, yes, we can. We'd have to start implementing policies, or at least following the policies that we have, and implementing new policies to protect our interests. And those are like two of the subjects I just mentioned. Okay, well, except have you noticed there's a glaring problem here, and that is none of that's talked about. So why wouldn't the housing committee talk about this subject? Now, years ago, I went to the housing committee and I said, I think one of the goals of the housing committee should be to try to improve the housing stock for families. We had just voted on Measure J, which is, basically a $200 million redo of our schools. And so to attract families to Emeryville to go to the school that we just paid $200 million for, don't you think we should provide housing for families in Emeryville? Well, I couldn't get anybody on the committee or at City Hall to have that be a priority for the committee, or even for the it wasn't a priority housing goal for the city of Emeryville until I started making it public and embarrassing the city, and then finally they did turn it into a goal. Except how have they done on that account? Well, every year Emeryville gets it's already the worst city in the East Bay for families, the worst. And every year it gets worse still. We're failing utterly with our own stated goals. So, I'd like to hear some talk about, how are we actually doing rather than hearing a bunch of fluff. So could you change this so next time you hear a report, we can hear real news that's useful rather than a bunch of fluff that the elected officials like to hear. And that's
all right. Any other public comment?
There are none at this time.
Okay, Member Bowders, if you'll forgive me, I'm going to let Member Medina speak and then come to you, even though it's your committee. Member Medina, do you have any comments?
Yeah. Just in response to the public comment, I gotta say that was incredibly sexist, suggesting that I would faint from offense. I think you have had members of this body disagree with you many times. Suggesting that I would require a Victorian era fainting couch is completely sexist. We should sit with that for a while.
Excellent. Thank you. Member Bowders.
I almost don't want to go after that. I just want to agree with my colleague that sexist fainting couches are from a Victorian era and don't belong in this community. So please stop making those insinuations for my excellent counterparts on this council. But I also just wanted to bolster what the committee does, because I appreciate public comment, and I appreciate that people have the right to say whatever they want to say. But what I don't appreciate is uninformed comment, speaking as if it's the truth. And I have never seen the public commenter at a housing committee meeting, and I served on that committee before I was on the council, and I had been the council liaison on that committee since I got on the council. And I would just like to share some of the incredible things that this incredible group of people do. They provided very important input on the RFP and other information about 3706 San Pablo. They did the same thing for the 4300 San Pablo RFP related to intergenerational housing, which is affordable housing for marginalized people. They have provided input to staff on the BMR program. They ask very good questions about the BMR program and how we calculate the rates and who is eligible. They stay informed, and they are ambassadors of our city and the residents who they represent to the residents in their own neighborhoods. They've provided a ton of feedback on the tenant rights programs, including our landlord-tenant protection ordinance, our just cause eviction ordinance, and most recently, on very short notice, they provided feedback on the Emeryville Emergency Rental Assistance Program. They were incredibly helpful in Measure C and helping craft what that looks like, and they are working on the expenditure plan in the coming months as well. So I just want to thank the Housing Committee for all the things that you just weren't complimented for, but I see you do at every meeting, and just reassure those members of the public who feel like this is all puffery for elected people. This really has nothing to do with us, and this isn't a report to make us feel good. This is a committee that works hard. They are very, very well-informed people. They ask good questions. They are progressive and care about their neighbors, and I'm very grateful that we have all of them on the committee. Thank you.
Great. Member Martinez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If you had asked me what the most pressing issue was in the Bay Area in 2020, maybe on March 13th, I would have said housing. And after the pandemic, I'm going to say it's going to come in a close second. This is very important work that the members of this committee do, and I have so much gratitude for the time that they spend, their wonderful questions and suggestions that filter up to the council, and we are a better city for having this committee, and thank Member Bowders for serving as liaison.
Thank you. Member Donahue, do you have comments?
Well, I think it would be nice to know the rate at which our city has grown recently and its projected growth. You know, just sort of broad overview would be nice for the council to know, and a look at our, upcoming projects and whether they're going to stay. They're going to be progressing. Just as a council, the big change we're in, it'd be nice to get an update on our housing going forward.
So, Member Donahue, as a fellow white male, I will tell you what I will do for you. I will get the federal government to go door to door and count everybody in town, so we can get those numbers for you pretty quick.
Okay. Excellent.
Member Medina, did you have any other housing comments?
I'd like to thank the committee for all their hard work.
Excellent. I want to, again, echo the thank yous. I want to echo exactly what, everybody else said, particularly Member Martinez. I agree with her that we look at it. I will say that while we have a big pressing issue in front of us, as the council all sits in our homes right now, able to continue working, it shows how big housing is. And while it is number 2, I agree it is going to become number 1 again very quickly. So I want to thank Ms. Owens for her work. I want to thank the Housing Committee and apologize for the public speaker's sexism to my colleagues, because I was aghast and am saddened that we still live in the world where those sort of things happen. Next on our agenda is Parks and Rec. Let's have some more sunshine and talk about Parks and Rec. I believe, Brad, you're on the line. Are you going to introduce our speaker?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I can do that. I'd like to introduce Zoe Chafe, who made a little cameo appearance earlier when someone in her household pinch hit for the Bike Pit Committee. So Zoe, if you're on the line, you can unmute yourself now and go ahead and take the mic.
Thanks very much, Brad. Good evening, everyone. Mayor Pat, Vice Mayor Martinez, and council members. It is my pleasure to present you, hopefully with some sunshine tonight, in the form of the annual report from the Parks and Recreation Committee. So I am representing the rest of our committee, Vice Chair Sasheen Andrade, Gail Donaldson, Jack Gazzoni, and Patty Weber. And we're very grateful to Brad and Pedro Jimenez for their work in helping this committee to do its work. We're also very glad to have Scott Donahue as our council liaison. So I'm going to start with an overview of the committee's goals and principles, which have changed a bit this year. The first is to advise on the improvement and maintenance of the city's parks, green space, and recreation programs. And importantly, we strive to improve access for Emeryville residents to park space, also increasing recreation opportunities for the local community and improving the variety and quality of park and recreation experiences within the city. Next slide, please. One thing we've added is that given the city's climate action plan, we feel we must anticipate how current parklands within the city may be affected by changes such as rising sea levels, and we should plan in anticipation of this. Next slide, please. I'm going to go through 2 slides with what we see as our accomplishments for the year 2019. I think the previous speaker noted, this was prepared pre-COVID, so it's a reflection of what we see as the important work we did last year, and please keep that in mind as we show our priorities for going forward. So one thing that we worked on, and thank the council for their support in, was securing funding for Davenport Park, which is a small piece of land to the west of the freeway. The next was to review proposed park space for Ani. We explored the usage of Caltrans right-of-way as park space, looking for areas within the city that we might be able to open up that haven't been used as park space before. We also recommended the closure of Doyle Street between 61st and 62nd Street in order to create some continuity between the tot lot and the main part of Doyle Hollis Park on either side. And I'll show a slide after this one with the current state there. And then lastly, for this slide, we recommended that the City Council consider a park bond. Next slide, please. So this is a picture I took just a few days ago of Doyle between 61st and 62nd, and I think some, if not all people know that thanks to quick action on the part of Emeryville's government, the street is temporarily closed there now, and this is part of what we had been envisioning as a pilot program going forward. Next slide, please. So continuing with accomplishments for 2019, we recommended additional signage for the dog park next to the Park on Powell Apartments between Stanford and Powell near Hollis. We found that there was very little awareness that the dog park there was public, and so we're hoping that the signage will encourage people to visit that. We initiated discussions on improvements at Stanford Avenue Park, including potential reorganization of the use and prioritization of a new sort of open play area, but nothing has been finalized there yet. We prioritized installation of riprap at Point Emery to protect that fragile piece of parkland. We provided feedback and prioritization of CIP projects regarding parks, and as mentioned before, we were very glad to add a City Council liaison, Scott Donahue, and we also reorganized the committee in an effort to recruit additional members by taking some specialized positions and opening those up to all community members. And finally, we recommended an update to the municipal code on dogs and parks. Next slide, please. So in terms of our priorities for 2020, again, created pre-pandemic, prioritizing CIP projects that include new and expanded park spaces and improve and maintain existing park spaces. And we'd also like to look specifically at expansion of park spaces in Emeryville with the goal of improving the ratio of the amount of park space that we have to residents and other users. We all know that there are many people who don't live here but do come to Emeryville during the day, during normal times. We'd like to increase awareness of available parks and open spaces by including privately owned public open spaces that are in private areas but are open to the public by doing things such as creating better maps and signage. And then we'd like to complete the playground improvements at Davenport Park, which are underway in the form of a fence, but may be taken forward in the form of some playground equipment in the future. Next slide, please. And our second slide on priorities for 2020, as mentioned, we'd like to explore potential improvements at Stanford Park. We were hoping to do a community workshop, but that is, of course, indefinitely on hold. We'd like to evaluate and update the Parks and Recreation Strategic Plan for reasons I'll get to in my last slide, and continue to advise the Community Services Department on events and programming. We think that identifying funding mechanisms for future park spaces is crucial part of our work as a committee. We'll continue that. And then finally, there's been a lot of interest in eradicating foxtails within the city to become a more animal-friendly city. Next slide, please. So just 2 highlighted priorities for 2020. One is to prioritize CIP projects that improve and maintain existing park spaces. One of the reasons that we felt so strongly about working on Davenport Park is that there are currently no parks with playgrounds to the west of the freeway. So if and when that's finished, that will be the first one there. And then we want to identify new opportunities for park improvements within the CIP. Next slide, please. And the second highlighted priority would be to evaluate and update the strategic plan as mentioned before. This was last finalized in 2011, and we've seen major changes in our city since then. We'd like to evaluate how the plan has been implemented thus far and think about how the park space is now distributed within the city, while also thinking about where the changes in population are and where the needs are for park space within the city. Next slide, please. So in conclusion, we want to emphasize that as the population of Emeryville increases, we do need to identify funding options for expansion of our park system. The demographics of Emeryville are changing, and we see more families living in the city. So we think that identifying new park space will be crucial to meeting those needs. I believe that's the last slide. Happy to take questions.
All right, well, thank you for that presentation. Any members have any questions? All right, the moment we've all been waiting for, public comment on this item.
I have none via email, and I do have one raised hand.
Shocked.
Okay, the mayor is shocked, and now I'm going to provide even more shock. And because women use parks as well as men, and so, you know, these are going to be sexist comments about parks. Offensive comments, too. So get ready for offensive, sexist comments. Emeryville, as the elected officials know, but most people just tuning in probably don't know, is similar to housing, it's the worst city in the East Bay. In terms of the residents per acre of park, Emeryville comes in dead last. And again, every year we get worse. So we heard like nothing about this very salient and important part of Emeryville public policy vis-a-vis parks. Heard nothing from the committee. So, you know, what could be done about it? Well, the committee did do one thing. I heard, I listened closely, and they did do one thing that you would have to say is a good thing. So bravo to the committee. And that was in 2019, they recommended to the council to float a park bond. So that's good. You know, notice that the council didn't do anything with it, but they at least did recommend. So that's a thing that they did in 2019 that was valuable. What else could be done? Well, there's the big elephant in the room, which are the developers that keep exacerbating our terrible ratio of residents per park acreage. The committee could and should, and I've asked the committee about this, and they listened and they didn't do anything, so I guess they're not interested. The committee could and should ask the council to start telling the developers they have to pitch in and help. For instance, the Ani project is going to be adding over 1,000 new residents, and it's got 0.5 acres of parkland that we're getting in trade for that, which really brings down Emeryville's average. So, you know, what I'm hearing is from a committee that's basically saying nothing can be done, you know, our hands are tied, and then of course we hear that from the council as well. Nothing can be done, really. I mean, they don't actually come out, the council doesn't come out and actually say that. That would be too embarrassing. But that's the net effect of their lack of action. Nothing can be done. Emeryville residents must get used to the idea that Emeryville must get worse every year vis-a-vis parks. We're bad now, and every year we get worse, and you just have to learn to accept that. That's the end of the offensive and sexist comments on parks. Thank you.
Okay, any other public comment?
No, Mayor, there isn't.
Okay, Scott, you sit on this committee. I'd like to go ahead and start with you.
Well, I'd like to point out that today, with Emeryville's current population, we are very similar to the city of Berkeley in residents per acre park. Oakland has many more acres of park per resident, partly because they have so much parkland, including land directly east of Berkeley. But the question for our city is an urban park. We need to develop parks that an urban environment will use. And that's a different experience than having lots of parkland in the hills. Developed parks are what matter to our residents, so that we have user-friendly parks. And I think that we have been doing that recently, and we've been doing good improvements that make our parks more used than before. Like, for example, next to the public market, Due West, we've renovated that park, and it is being significantly used, and it's been expanded. And I think that when we think about our city and parks going forward, we have to remember that we are an urban location, and that's how we have to think about our parks. And the plan, as you just heard, addresses our needs going forward. Yes, we have to strategize. How are we going to pay for more parks? Maybe we should have a park bond to help pay for more parks, or ways that we can influence future development to somehow include more parks that we're going to need as our population increases. So I feel that this committee is actively working on these issues, and I think that we have to continue to think about this going forward, and our committee will continue to work on this.
Thank you. Any other member like to comment? Okay, I will just take a moment and say thank you to Zoe for presenting. I appreciate that. And to Brad and Pedro for your excellent work, and the committee as a whole. Appreciate it. And with that, we will move on to the next committee, which I believe is Budget Advisory, and their annual report.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. This is Susan Shea. The Budget Advisory Committee Chair, Bill Reuter, will present the report tonight. Now I will turn it over to Bill.
Excellent. Thank you. Welcome, Bill.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Very good. Slides, please.
One moment. Are you seeing the slides?
We are not.
No.
Okay. The last one went so smoothly. There we go.
Well, city councilors, I know that you will eventually get the slides up. Why don't I just go ahead and plunge in? I've got my copies of them in front of me. And thanks for your patience. You've been listening to lots of reports. And here's a nice, good and gloomy one for you from the Budget Advisory Committee. It's a hardworking group. We are shy of one member currently, but we have a very good council liaison with John Bowders, who keeps us informed of what's going on with other operations. Benet Curtis Bauer represents small businesses. Maru Desai, the labor interest of the city. Fran Quattel is a resident member, and I try to keep liaison between the committee, the Budget Advisory Committee, and EDAC, where I also serve as a member. Major accomplishments, that is the things that we did. We reviewed the pension trust quarterly investment reports and monitored investment portfolios, and we will of course continue to do so and worry about how our investment portfolio will do in the current unstable economic situation. We discussed funding strategies for pension and OPEB, other post-employment benefit liabilities. We're monitoring that closely. We always have. We know that unfunded pension liabilities down the road are a major challenge for the city. You all know that, but I hope that folks listening in will appreciate that. And when we think about how PERS is doing in the current market unstable situation, we're apt to face additional challenges in this department, this area, in the future. So we have to keep our eye on that. We reviewed the 18-19 mid-year budget amendments. We reviewed the 1921, 2019-2021 operating budget, including updated financial policies and long-term financial projections. And even before the current difficulties that the world economy, regional economy, and the state economy faces, the national economy faces, we noticed in Emeryville a flattening of revenue flow and an increase in expenses intersecting somewhere down the road in about 5 years' time. These are things that have to be watched closely, which caused us to think carefully about how we might find additional revenue funds in the future. Please, yes, thank you. Catch up with me. One more, please. There we are. Now we're up to date. And we reviewed the 5-year capital improvement program, and we're keeping an eye on that as we go along. Next slide, please. Yes, this is where we should be. Back one, I'm sorry, Sherry, my fault. The COVID-19 pandemic. Negative impacts on businesses and city revenues. We just had a study session. We had a meeting with city staff also last Thursday that looked closely at these matters. It's not a pretty picture. We're going to have serious challenges and difficulties ahead, and we're going to have to take some proactive steps to monitor revenues and expenditures. Lost revenue estimates from our principal producers of revenue, such things, for example, as retail sales taxes, transit occupancy taxes, business license tax, card room, and what have you. All of these are substantially and negatively affected by the collapse of the economy in the pandemic. We have to do something about that. The city is also, the staff is already beginning to plan proactive steps to deal with this. We have endorsed a series of them, which you folks will be hearing about soon. In fact, I know you've already been informed of what these steps are. They involve such things, for example, as a one-time shift of funds from certain capital improvements to the general fund to cover losses, a freeze of 16 vacant positions in city staff, suspend payments into the pension liability program and litigation fund. All of these have been endorsed, by the way, by the Budget Advisory Committee. They're not happy things to do. We hope to reverse them somewhere down the road, but they're good steps to give us some time, plot and plan, and try to deal with the serious and negative economic problems that we face. And we need effective strategies and tactics to weather the challenges ahead. It's not going to be easy. There's no way to hide that fact. Next slide, please. Top priorities for next time around: to ensure adequate reserve balances. I'm happy to report, by the way, that the temporary steps that have been taken and recommended by the staff, and I think will be endorsed by the City Council soon, keeps our basic
economic, make sure I got that title right, the Economic Contingency Fund untouched at 50% of the city's 2-year budget cycle. That's a nice reserve to have in place. I must confess, when I first started serving on the Budget Advisory Committee, then called the Finance Advisory Committee many years ago, that fund was down around in the 21, 22, 23% category. It's now at 50%, and that's a good place for us to be. So we have to make sure that our reserve balances stay intact and robust, if at all possible. And of course, we must identify new sources of revenues. That's not going to be easy in a time when all of the elements, economic elements in our city are under stress, and asking folks to pay additional taxes or find new sources of revenue is not going to be easy. And finally, we have to try to keep continuing to pay down the city's unfunded liabilities. That's a really big challenge. It's been a challenge in the past. We've stepped up by prepayments and by setting aside reserve funds for that purpose, but it's not going to be easy to continue that. Next slide, please. Other priorities for 2020, we're going to monitor city revenues, expenditures, and reserve funds to ensure prudent spending and long-term fiscal responsibility, sustainability. Indeed, we are. That's something we do all the time anyway. We're going to assess impacts of new revenue measures, for example, the cannabis tax, and look for new, as I've said, look for new revenue sources. We're going to review mid-cycle budget amendments, master fee schedules, and investment policy. We do that routinely. We'll continue to do it carefully as we can. We're going to review budget financial policies to ensure sound financial management. I actually think our policies are pretty sound. We might have to make some compromises and change some of our tactics occasionally, but we'll always continue to review our policies. And we're going to monitor pension and OPEB liabilities and review those problems down the road, as I've said. Next slide, please. Thanks very much. Happy to answer questions.
Thank you. Okay, any member questions? All right, seeing none, we'll quickly go to public comment. And then Member Bowders, I'm going to be coming to you.
Nothing via email, but I have one raised hand, last 4 digits, 1281.
All right.
Okay, we just heard a report from the budget committee that was, as the committee member told us, was rather gloomy. And I listened, and it was rather gloomy. There were a couple of bright spots, so the bright spots are nice to hear. But yeah, it's gloomy. So, insofar as the report is gloomy, let me warn the committee. Look out, because you're talking to the elected officials here in Emeryville, and they're not keen on hearing anything gloomy. Like, what they like to hear is chipper news. And so, insofar that you did present a gloomy report, watch out, because you could be determined as being offensive, or you could be characterized as being sexist for such a gloomy report. So if the elected officials want to unleash a storm against the presenter, I guess you'll have your chance to do that as soon as I'm finished talking. But I did hear some news that wasn't very chipper. So, but it was good to hear. It's good to hear how Emeryville sometimes isn't doing everything wonderfully well, and how Emeryville isn't like some pie in the sky utopia. That there are problems here. So it's good to see a committee addressing the problems. Thank you.
Okay, any other public comment? Okay, Member Bowders, would you like to make any comments?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to thank the hardest working and my favorite committee ever has always been the Budget Advisory Committee, and they always question me and say, is that still true? And it's always still true. They take on some of the hardest work. The material is very dense. It's not light reading. It would put most of us to bed, I would say. And they do a lot of diligence with it with a very small committee. excellent set of skills and talents among a small group of people. Makes for a very long, it rivals BPAC in terms of the length of those meetings, several hours in length. So, but far more dry than the BPAC, I promise you. But I just wanted to not directly respond to public comment, but more to Mr. Reuter's comments. I want to thank him for being such a good chair, and I also want to just note that the forecast for all cities and counties is bad right now, and it's not. There's no harm in calling that what it is. I mean, that can be scary for public employees. That can be scary for people in a community who wonder how that will implicate their taxes or their home values or their school, quality of schools. There's a lot of things people think about when the economy goes bad, their jobs, and what it means for their neighborhood. And I think it's really important to have an open and honest dialogue about what those implications are, and then to talk really level-headed about how we can address those concerns and make people see that options exist and think and work together to get through this. And I just really want to thank the staff in this advisory committee, and I also want to thank Councilmember Martinez as my counterpart on budget governance, because this is a committee that gets overlooked in a city that's been doing a really good job at budgeting. We have very strong budget policies. The council has been really prudent over the past few years, and we have put money in the right places. We've adopted policies and protocols that have given us a really advantageous head start. Are we in the clear? No. But our fiscal practices, as the committee announced at the beginning, and as the city manager, I think, noted when her study session presentation opened earlier, the city has done the right things. And does that clear us from any potential problems? No. But what it does is it gives us a place to start from that's calm and reasoned, and those choices we made are going to save jobs. They're going to save businesses. They're going to do a lot of good things for us. And so I don't think it's a scary thing to talk about the challenges that we have lying ahead, because we've done the homework to make sure that we are in a position to make the best possible choices in a crisis going forward. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Martinez? You were next either way.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I co-signed everything that Member Bowders just said. There are many cities in the state of California that are making very difficult decisions already, making cuts, furloughing, cutting hours for employees. And because of decisions that we've made on this council and because of previous councils before us, we are in the position where we do not need to be hasty with any of our decisions. And it's absolutely true that we don't know what's going to happen with the economy and how quickly we will recover from this crisis. But we are in an enviable position as it comes to our reserve policies, and we can act very rationally. And I'm grateful to the members of the committee for advising us throughout the years very well. And thankful to Member Bowders for serving on this committee as well.
Thank you both. Member Donahue or Member Medina, any comments?
Yeah, I'd like to make a comment.
Go right ahead.
I just want to say that, mostly for the public, is that we're not like other cities, partly because we had our property tax all, for the most part, is going to pay off bonds when we made 90% of our city a redevelopment zone. So we get our income differently than other cities. And it's made us have to be more nimble and pay attention to how a downturn can affect us more. So we've had to save more for this exact reason. And I'd just like to say that it's not a bad position to be in for a city. We'll be in it for another maybe 8 years until these bonds are paid off. It's not a bad position, partly because we can make choices in the future that could address our problems and move forward. I'll just give an example. We used to have a fire department that was, for our small city, frankly, not very good. We couldn't fight all the diverse aspects of our city's infrastructure, that fight those fires, industrial, residential, just things that a small city has had trouble to step up to. And we made a good choice in having the county as our fire department. Our quality went up. And so if we can be willing to alter our thinking going forward, I think that we will get through this.
Thank you. Member Medina?
I just want to thank all the committee members for their hard work. It is a complex subject matter. It's about to get even less fun. And they always give us excellent guidance and really thoroughly analyze the position we're in. So I want to thank them all for their year's work on this committee and for consistently being such a strong advice group committee for our council.
Thank you. So thank you. I guess it comes to me, and I want to take a moment and thank the committee, thank my colleagues who serve on that committee. And I want to say that we are positioned better than most to weather this storm, that we had the foresight to say storms were coming. Bill, I hope you don't feel too offended by all our comments for delivering us the negative news. And I want to take a moment, though, and say, I think that committee works really well because of the members of the committee, but I think staff also provides you guys some excellent information. So I want to personally thank Susan, the city manager, the city attorney, and all the other members of city staff who support our budget process. And so I want to say thank you to all of that. And with that, we are done with this item. All right, that is the last of the 12.1 items. That brings us to 12.4, which is me. So, city manager, go ahead.
Sorry, just 12.2.
Did I say 12.4? Okay, yes, I was looking at the old item. I was looking at 12.1.4. 12.2, this is why I don't sit on the budget committee. 12.2, so we set up an ad hoc committee. Just now realizing you called it the street naming committee, but we really set up an ad hoc committee to recognize people, and we've talked about a lot more than naming streets. All those streets are what we're going to address in a moment. And I first want to thank Member Bowders for doing this with me and for planting the seed for this idea. We had come up with 3 people that we really thought was important to honor. 2 of them were past council members. And given all that's ongoing right now, we're not ready to roll those out because we want to let situations settle down and construction to continue. So we will report out those at a later date. But we did also want to take some time and honor somebody for his courage, his service to our town, and his mentoring of people in general. I have talked about this in other venues in the past, but we are coming to you tonight to ask for your approval to rename 47th between San Pablo and I believe that's Hollis right there, in honor of a former teacher in town, Steve Dane. And I don't think this is a surprise to most of you. I have been approached, and I want to say, Member Bowders came to me with this idea. Member Martinez separately came to me, either having heard it out in the community or separately. And so I really appreciated that. And so I'm going to hand it off, San Pablo to Doyle, thank you. And I'm going to hand it off to Member Bowders to get his comments on this. And then we'll go to public comment and have discussion if there are no clarifying questions. Member Bowders?
Mr. Mayor, sure. I'll just say that the idea to have this ad hoc naming committee was the mayor's idea, and he and I met on a couple occasions to discuss opportunities to do this. The city hasn't had a long history, or any history for the most part, since the very early days of doing this for people who've made significant contributions or who are worthy of a level of recognition. And I really appreciate him as a member of the Community Services Committee and being so connected and having a background with the school district, and his connection to people in the senior center just really was a great partnership for he and I to have that chance to sit and talk about this his interest in recognizing members of our community is something that I know during my tenure as mayor, I really wanted to lift up and support. So I just want to express sincere gratitude. I think my colleagues feel the same way, but I just want to let everyone know that the mayor is the driving force behind recognizing people in this manner, and I think it's laudable. And then I just want to say, I really debated saying anything because this is a really great suggestion that the mayor has put together for renaming this portion of the street. There are only two address entities on this segment of 47th Street, the AC Transit Building and the gymnasium. And so those would be the entities we'd have to engage. And probably against better judgment, I'm going to just have one last comment, which is I'm really, really unhappy with the Emory Unified School District. And I just need to say that. And I need to say that in a public meeting and not be afraid to say that. As an LGBT person, it is very, very disheartening to know that in 1976, our school district in an earlier time terminated somebody from employment because of who they were. That is very personally frustrating to hear, and I know that many people will say it was a different time then. But this is something that Mayor Pat has brought up on numerous occasions in different venues through a very professional approach to trying to have that person's dignity, even posthumously, restored to them by doing something to honor them for being someone who it was very hard to be. It's very hard to be a gay person in the modern era, and it is unimaginable to me to be out in the school setting as a transgendered person in the 1970s. And so I think his recognition of Steve Dane is not just something that the LGBT community would look at passively as, oh, this is a great choice. This is a significant choice that he's recommending. And I just say that Emory Unified School Board has reached a new level of disappointment with me, because I don't know how, with all the years of Mayor Pat's trying to bring closure to someone who really never got that, why there hasn't been a formal apology, why the school district has continued to say, we'll find a way to do something about this, but has never taken initiative, either voluntarily or upon being encouraged to do so, never taken the initiative to do something right by Steve Dane's name and his family. And so I'm very supportive of the mayor's proposal, and I think he is doing the right thing. And when the school district or any other entity won't lead us, I know we've all said before, the city should. And that's what his proposal is doing. And I thank you, Mayor Pats, for this proposal.
Thank you. And I want to thank you for your both kind words and for speaking the truth. I find that if I open the dam, it will flood too much, and so I'm going to focus in on the positive and go back to what I said before. And I don't want to diminish what you said, because I think you were able to frame it in a way that was appropriate. If I spoke from the heart at the moment, it would not be heard. And so I want to go back to I want to do this to honor Steve Dane. I think he is worthy of it. I think his courage, I think his leadership, and most importantly, his service, both as a teacher and afterwards. My hope had been, and the committee's hope had been, that we get your permission to do this tonight, and then we would redo it. We would do the public unveiling for Pride this year. Because of COVID-19, and really because my ego must make me say this, because I'm the mayor who cancels everything, Pride was canceled this year. And so that date doesn't work. Oakland does their Pride in September, and then the National Day of Remembrance is in November. So we will find an appropriate time as things open up to if we get your blessing this evening, to do it. I will take clarifying questions and then go to the public comment. Do we have any clarifying questions from council members? Excellent. Sherry, do we have any public comment on this item?
No online cards, but we do have now 2 raised hands. I'll go first to last 4 digits, 1281.
Okay.
Okay. Hello. the city of Emeryville. I don't do it often. I reserve it for the times when it's truly earned. And this is one of those moments. I would like to personally thank the mayor, Christian Patz, and Councilmember John Bowders for taking the lead on this great moral stance. And I'll even call it a courageous stance. It's, of course, the courage that you're displaying here doesn't come anywhere close to the courage displayed by Mr. Dane back in '76. However, I have to call it out. This is what government is here for. This kind of thing. I join with Councilmember Bowders' disappointment in the school district for continuing to do nothing when after they had been told about Mr. Dane's the modern iteration of the school board. And let's just say for the record right now that as of this moment, Mr. Dane was fired by the Emeryville Unified School District for quote, immorality, close quote. That's the stated reason for his firing. And that still stands. There's there's been no official apologies given, no recognition that what the district did was wrong. And so I applaud the city of Emeryville for seeing that distress and seeing that problem and seeing a great need for some healing to happen here, and then taking control where the school district dropped the ball. So I commend and I applaud the city of Emeryville, and I presume you will pass this. I hope you do. And I would like, again, lastly, to say again thank you to Mayor Christian Patz. We don't always agree on everything, but on this we most certainly do. I think this is a great piece of government legislation, or if it could be called that. A great piece of government work, and occasionally Emeryville gets it right, and this is one of those times. And again, also thank you to Councilmember John Bowders, both those members were on the ad hoc committee. Thank you again. That's all.
Okay, and the second speaker, please.
Okay, this is Susan D.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
It doesn't appear that I'm on the video. I'm just going to forego that rather than fussing here. I wanted to, this is Susan Donaldson. I am a Emeryville resident and a school board member, new-ish school board member. And I wanted to say that I'm so happy to hear that the city is going to hopefully move forward in this way to honor Steve Dane. I was on the losing side of the naming of the gymnasium vote, and I am personally leading an effort to have the school officially create a letter of apology to Steve Dane and his family. And some of the staff have approached me with incorporating this story with our LGBTQ curriculum. And really, I'm just saying that to offer my support and to thank the city for continuing to fight this fight. And I am doing what I can from my end to also right this wrong from the perspective of the school district, which is where this apology needs to come from. And so thank you.
Thank you, School Board Member Donaldson. I want to open it up for discussion and comments. So any of your council members have any comments or things? Yes, Member Medina.
I'd like to thank both you, Mayor, and Councilmember Bowders for the leadership on this issue. I was ignorant of this history until you brought it to my attention, Mayor. And I think the most striking thing for me is when I looked into who Steve Dane was. I read his obituary. His obituary says that he died surrounded by a large, loving family. He was known throughout his entire life as a teacher and a constant learner, and a great lover of animals who had iguanas and raccoons and was called Dr. Dolittle. And I think that's the really beautiful thing, that he was a brave person who lived in a time that didn't fully accept him. Even though he was treated unfairly, he lived a full and happy life and had an obituary I think any of us would be proud to have. And I think that's a great thing for kids that are struggling with their identity and a profound lack of visibility of these issues. I think this is a teaching experience. And that's something the school should be very interested in. And it's unfortunate that they did not vote to name something at the school in honor of Mr. Dane. And I think this is a step we can take to teach our community and future generations about Steve Dane, and we can all learn some lessons and move on.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Member Martinez, Vice Mayor Martinez?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I agree with what Member Medina just said. Steve Dane is an important part of our history in Emeryville that needs to be acknowledged and honored, and we need to give space for families and children in our school district to be able to have pride in different identities. And I hope this doesn't sound false coming from a cisgender person, but for those of our community members who are trans or non-binary, we need to normalize their experience and we need to give them room to tell their stories. And I think this is a really salient step, and I thank the mayor and Member Bowders for bringing this forward.
Thank you. Member Donahue, would you like to add anything?
I look forward to reading the sign at the corner on San Pablo and Steve Dane Way or Steve Dane Street.
I have an alliteration thing, so I'm going to go with Steve Dane Drive.
Okay.
I cannot rhyme to save my life, but I can alliterate with the best of them. I want to thank you guys. Member Bowders, I don't want to skip you, but I feel like I gave you an opportunity earlier. So
I have said my piece, and I have a whiny foster puppy, so I'm good.
Okay. So I'm going to call for the vote, and I'm going to make the motion myself this evening and ask Member Bowders for his second. But I just want to make a couple of comments, and while I appreciate both the work Member Donaldson has done, it was just last year at this time we were dealing with bigotry in Dublin and the not wanting to recognize people for being who they are. And for me, that is what this always comes up about. Is, I think I called Mr. Dane courageous multiple times. It should not take courage to be who you are. You should be allowed to be who you are in this world. And so I am humbled by my colleagues and the level of, I'm going to just use the word love, you guys have shown this evening, and say thank you. And with that, I move that we rename 47th Street to Steve Dane Drive. And for that, I'll go to you, Member Bowders, for a second.
Clarify, Mr. Mayor, you mean between San Pablo and Doyle, correct?
Correct.
And I will second your motion with a love wins.
Thank you. And with that, Sherry, will you take a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Bowders?
Aye.
Councilmember Donahue?
Aye.
Councilmember Medina?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Martinez?
Aye.
And Mayor Pats?
Yes. All right, thank you guys. I cannot tell you how much I appreciate that. And with that, we're at department head reports.
Don't know that we have any this evening, Mayor Pats, unless Sherry, if Charlie has shut up.
Charlie is on, but he doesn't have his hand raised.
Okay, so I think none this evening, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Future agenda items. And just wave at me, Member Bowders, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Medina and I, as the Transportation and Public Works Committee, discussed an item that staff encouraged us to raise here as a future agenda item, with the hopes that it could be as early as the next meeting, but we'd like to alleviate staff's concern that it's something we think is high level doable. The issue is, as the county moves into the stage 2 of reopening, restaurants are allowed to be, oh, I'm so sorry, she's got separation anxiety. You can come back over here. The county is allowed to reopen stage 2. Restaurants can have people come in and sit inside them, but there's going to still be some social distancing. And so as we've heard, probably there's other jurisdictions where streets are open for people to eat outside. And what we'd like to do is see if there's 2 things that we could have on the agenda. One, probably is one item. One is to discuss the ability to potentially suspend portions of the planning regulations related to permitting for outdoor serving food outdoors, like if someone wanted to convert parking spaces into table spaces, stuff like that. Normally they have to get a permit, and so we'd like to eliminate the cost and some of the timeline and process involved with that to make that more expedient for local restaurants that want to reopen. And then second, we thought that the process itself could be streamlined potentially, and that we could give the staff a series of guidelines as to like what conditions need to be met in order to allow this to happen from a policy perspective, so that staff can more in an accelerated manner. Baby girl, I love you too. That we could in an accelerated manner perhaps have staff administratively approve some of these requests, so that our restaurants can be up and running in a safe manner without the pressure from restaurant owners to perhaps break the rules and squeeze people inside. So I think, unless Councilmember Medina, unless I missed anything, I think that's our request, correct?
That sums it up.
All right. And I think if we all can nod for support for this.
Yes.
All right, excellent. Any other future agenda items? Member Martinez?
Mr. Mayor, I was wondering, kind of on the same order of business, it's San Francisco recently created an emergency order to cap restaurant fees, delivery fees for restaurants at 15%. And so that's what that is the amount that Grubhub, for instance, would take from the total order. So it takes a cut out of what the restaurant makes. And I was wondering if council would support at least looking into what the effects of that are. If Chad might be able to take a look at what the impact of that is on restaurants in San Francisco and in other cities where this cap is being implemented. Because I'm sure council, we're all hearing from local restaurants and the squeezes that they're feeling in terms of needing to pay their rent over the past couple of months and balancing that with changing their models to delivery.
Okay, thank you. Support everyone, or thoughts?
Yes, let's look into that.
Okay, well, there's 4 for you. So there you go, 2 future agenda items. Anybody else have a future agenda item? I looked away, so if you raised your hand, I missed it. Okay, I think that is it. It is now 9:05. I believe we sit adjourned.